So in these economic times, obviously, there's a lot of fear going around. You're losing your money. You're worrying about your home, your assets. Well, let me introduce you to a guy who went through, well, maybe an even worse situation. Ernest Chu, an investment banker, started lots of businesses, and then he went more than broke. You lost how much money?
I was $1 million in debt.
Yeah. And so as a former investment banker, a man who really understood business, Ernest found sort of a different way of looking at what is wealth, and there's a real wealth of information. His book is called Soul Currency, Investing Your Inner Wealth for Fulfillment and Abundance, and I got to tell you that the title sort of understates it because it kind of sounds new agey, and it's really more than that. It's a much more almost scientific look at the fact that there are two different kinds of wealth that you have, and they both balance out. So first of all, what are the spiritual assets that you're talking about?
Well, spiritual assets are things that we've called divine gifts, natural-born talents, character, qualities, but they're the inner qualities. But I've chosen to call them assets because when you use the word asset, it reminds you that there's some value to it.
But, you know, it's a little hard to monetize persistence or to monetize, you know, joyfulness for most people. So in this book here, so here's a list of spiritual assets. And then this is kind of a sort of a mock, but it's a balance sheet where you look at the money side of it, but then you throw in your spiritual assets. How do you figure out what the spiritual assets are worth, and how do you get them into a more useful
Well, first of all, individual assets in and of themselves, when you focus on them, may not directly translate into something that is directly attributable to money.
Right.
But you have to remember that all of those assets and all of those qualities work in tandem, almost like an orchestra playing a beautiful symphony. And they're set into motion by focus and intention. And when virtually any one of the people watching today will probably recognize that when they really decide that they want something, they really are very determined. Determination is not the only quality that they're using. They're using a lot of other qualities, and that actually allows you to become successful. It allows you to open up to a greater possibility of yourself.
So let me be real specific. Let's suppose it's somebody who works in an office, and they're feeling financially strapped. Okay, but they want to increase their overall wealth. You know, the money, well, there's not much you can do about it right now, but they want to have that sense of more overall. Where do you start?
Well, this whole being able to open to soul currency is a matter of subtraction, not addition. Most of us have what I call counterfeit currency, which are these counterfeit beliefs about yourself. And these include, I'm not good enough, life is a struggle, I always get to a point where I look like I'm going to be successful and then I blow it.
Yeah, I'm scared of changing things.
I'm scared of changing. It makes me uncomfortable. I'd rather have the life that I have, and so they do. They have the life that they have.
Okay, well, that's pretty depressing. So then what do we do?
Well, I think that you have to make up your mind that there's something really quite magnificent within you, and that it's not really hard for you to really get to that point. You just simply have to be able to just let go of a lot of these counterfeit beliefs, because I call them counterfeit beliefs because there's a law against passing phony money, you know, $1,000 bills that you make in your basement or so forth. But there's no law about passing phony stories about yourself and telling yourself things that you know are not necessarily true, but you've told them so many times that you believe they are, and those things are what limits you.
Wow. So how, let us suppose that you now say, okay, I understand what my gifts are. And, you know, there's a whole list in here in case you're having trouble figuring out what your gifts are. I understand that. How do I make that a part of my wealth? I mean, he was an investment banker, so wealth is the term we're using, but you know, you can apply it in a lot of different ways. How do I incorporate that into my wealth?
Well, one of the things that you do is to really become more aware of who you really are. Most of us do a lot of wonderful things during the day. We don't think anything of it, but we do one thing that embarrasses us, or one thing that really just is something that we are very critical of ourselves are. We remember that for a week.
Right.
And so...
or a month.
Or
a year.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things I suggest is take a little pad that you can carry around and give yourself the discipline of writing down every hour 2 things that you've done right. And you'll notice that sometimes things will repeat themselves. But after you've done that for about 4 days, and that's a lot of things writing down, you will find, one, that it will be easier to write down these things, and two, there'll be a pattern. And you'll get to see really how many things you really do well.
Right. Okay, not to be too crass about this, but how do I monetize my greater gifts, my spiritual assets?
Well, what happens is that you have one of your assets is really what I call guidance. And it's being able to understand and know and have clarity about opportunities, about seeing your intention being created. And most of us really are so attached to form that we forget about the substance. So when opportunity shows up, it sometimes often may not be looking. Thomas Edison said opportunity sometimes wears blue jeans.
Soul Currency is the book. Ernest Chu is the author, and Ernest has several appearances. He has one today, by the way, that is not up on the screen, and that's at the Center for Spiritual, what is that word?
Living. The Center for Spiritual Living in Fremont.
That's in Fremont, 510-656-9955. And on your screen, you can see November 12th, he's going to be appearing at Reader's Books in Sonoma and in Copperfield in Sebastopol. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a real pleasure.